Hello, welcome to Pro Arena Talk Podcast. This is the first edition of what's going to be a very special show. I got here with me Brian Davis and SAJay. Right now, it's just a show talking about pro arena football. Nothing too crazy. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves? I know you guys are on Texans Talking Football.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So, as Sammy said, I'm SAJ. Above me is BD, Brian Davis. We're the hosts of a show called Texans Talking Football, where it's everything football from a Texas perspective, right? Texas, as everybody knows, football is a religion in of itself down here. So we wanted to try and incorporate some of that into our show. And as we dove into our first season this last year, especially with the introduction of the XFL back into, really kind of all about Texas, right? We started discovering other options and other opportunities out there. Arena football from the NAL, the IFL. Then we kind of, rolled into the CIF and all these other different leagues. And so that's presented opportunities for us to talk about all different kinds of things, which kind of led us to our connection with you, Sammy. You're a big arena football guy. And so it just made sense that, we came together and decided to start talking about some football.
That's right. We love talking about football. We do it as much as we can. And yeah, like Jay said, we started doing the show. And we're like, all right, we'll talk about XFL, USFL, the NAL and NFL when it comes on. And we're like, holy crap, there's all these other arena leagues too that we didn't know about, hadn't heard of. They've all got Texas teams, and just definitely broaden our horizon with what's out there. So it's a lot of football. And
oh yeah,
a lot of football for us to talk about. So
yeah, so let's start with the show here. There's a lot of arena football to cover since this is the first show. We can really go a whole bunch of stuff here. Well, let's start with the championship games, man. Let's kick off with the IFL. The IFL championship game, it was interesting in my opinion because you have Sioux Falls, who was an underdog, beat Frisco the week before, who was flaming hot, beat Quad City by 50-something points. I mean, they were on a roll, and they prevented Frisco from getting off to that hot start, burying them, and really just kept the pressure on them until like the fourth quarter, where they had a crazy 2-point conversion at the end to win the game. It was like a trick play. It looks like a Philly special arena version of it. But yeah, what was your guys' reaction to that?
So I was absolutely blown away. Again, we have our Texas perspective, and everything's better here in Texas. So we pretty much banked on Frisco taking it all the way to the bank, right? And just looking at the box score alone, Frisco Fighters, who had been red hot pretty much all season long, unstoppable on offense, they got completely blanked in the third quarter. In the first quarter, they were only allowed 6 points. Like, that is not the Frisco Fighters that everybody knew. So there is absolutely no way that Frisco was prepared for that game against Sioux Falls. And it showed. I mean, Frisco Fighters going into that game were, just an absolute dominant powerhouse. They had rolled over everybody. And to get stomped like this and to have to, be fighting from behind the, almost the entire game. I mean, they did come back up in the second quarter, but then to get blanked again in the third. I mean, it was a prize fight for the ages, man. It was an incredible, incredible game.
Yeah, it was. And, credit to Sioux Falls. I mean, they did what people weren't expecting them to do. But, that's what happens in football. It's they believe in themselves, and, they're like, hey, we got this.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I think really what I think Sioux Falls was banking on was a start like that against Bay Area, and it just didn't go their way. I think it was 21-7 at the end of the first quarter. Bay Area got off to a start what they wanted, and after that, it was pretty much back and forth with that whole game until a late game pick six. I was really hoping Sioux Falls would get it for Curtis Riggs' last game, but it is how it is. That's how the cookie crumbles sometimes. It just comes up right at the end, man.
Yeah. Looking back at the box score on that one, you could tell that Sioux Falls was definitely in this game. They were fighting. They got behind in the first quarter and, managed to get 7 points on the board when Bay Area was up 13, right? But after that, then it was neck and neck. Sioux Falls would start closing that gap, and then Bay Area would run away with it again, and Sioux Falls would close it, and then Bay Area would run away. And then when you get down to about the fourth quarter, that's when it was just like Sioux Falls put the hammer down and just stayed ahead. I'm sorry, Bay Area rather stayed ahead and just controlled the narrative of the game from there.
That pick six really just killed the whole momentum from Sioux Falls. Any chance coming back from that one?
Oh yeah. But I will say though that even though Bay Area was definitely the dominant team in this one, it was an incredible game to watch. It was a lot of fun seeing that back and forth, Sioux Falls fighting for their life and just being the scrappy underdog, just not giving up and not just rolling over and just saying, okay, we're behind, we're done. Right. And we've seen that before in, some of the games that we've watched. We've seen that. Heck, we've seen that in, some NFL games, right? Where a team is just like, we're behind. We can't catch up. We give up. Right. These guys are not. I mean, these guys are fighting for their lives. Like this championship absolutely means the world to them. And it showed in their gameplay that they just absolutely did not give up. For example, I want to look at quarterback stats, right? Brown for Sioux Falls, 10 of 23, 92 yards. He was busting his hump. He was trying, right? If you look at Bay Area, 10 of 11, that's great, but he only threw for 106 yards, right? I mean, it was just, and I know Brian and I had talked about this before. I mean, this was an insane game. 100 yards rushing by Bay Area. You turn it around, Sioux Falls had 150 yards. And that's not normal on an arena game. I mean, most of the offense is done in the air. I mean, it's an air raid attack, right? And then you've got these two teams that are killing it on the ground. So you can tell that they threw everything they had at this game and, pulled out all the stops to try and do everything they could. It's especially Sioux Falls to try and get that win. So it was an incredible game to watch.
Yeah, and I'm really interested to see if this Bay Area Sioux Falls game, how Bay Area played this year, where they had a running quarterback, they had a running team, a ground and pound team, one of the best running games in the league, and one of the best defenses in the league. They're going to continue to capitalize or make that a combo and become the first, I feel like first ground and pound successful arena team out there.
Running and defense, those aren't things that you think about in arena league. It's like Jay said, it's an air raid. It's a passing league. It's a passing game. And so you got, Bay Area who just dominates defensively, dominates rushing, and they win. So, is this a turn for that league to, because football is a copycat sport. So are we going to see other teams that are going to try and do this as well?
Yeah. Well, Brian and I have talked about this before, and this isn't directly related, but kind of, a parallel in a different league. But in the NFL, we're seeing how the running back is becoming less and less of a key position. Your tight end is starting to become a more important key than the running back is. Well, could the running back be a more important key now in the IFL? Has the game evolved to that point where the defense is smothering, the long ball, so you got to gain your yards from your running back? What are your thoughts on that, Sammy?
Yeah, it could be. As far as, the NFL goes as well, you see running backs when they age, they hit this wall. It's like their yards and just yards per attempt go completely down. When you look at Adrian Peterson may have been the only outlier in that. And spending a lot of money on the running back, it just doesn't make sense on the long term.
Usually, once they hit 30, that production just goes off a cliff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look at Ezekiel Elliott in the NFL. Ever since his rookie year, yards per game has went down every single year. It's consistent. So I feel like, as spending money at that position, it just doesn't make sense. Going back to the arena, relating it to the arena game, I'd like to see how it develops, because I think long term we're going to have to see if running the ball makes sense, if there is going to be ways to stop that, because we're going to have defenses this coming off season going to be strategizing against the this new way of run, the new wave almost, because I think Sioux Falls was a primary. They didn't primarily run it, but they could definitely run it with Lorenzo Brown. He could definitely run a little bit. And
They put up
definitely could
150
run
in the championship game, so
Yeah.
they're
They
not
could
a
run it.
shabby running team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
they're not too bad. But they weren't as reliant on it as Bay Area was. But we'll see how the next year follows. Speaking of a new league member and another team that will be strategizing against Bay Area, Jacksonville. They had a championship game, I think about a week ago against Carolina. They did not get off to a great start. They looked really disorganized. It was a hit or miss every year. And I thought Carolina, or it was about, I forget what point in the first half, they were up by almost 3 scores. And I thought it was over for Jacksonville. Jacksonville in the second half. A shout out to Jason Gibson. I wish he would have won a championship in Columbus, but it is what it is sometimes. But he got the team together, and Jacksonville basically shut down Carolina in the second half.
That was definitely a tale of two halves. And yeah, Jacksonville, just that first half, they looked like crap. Even like looking at the box score, at the end of the first quarter, it was 21-14 Carolina. It didn't feel like it was 21-14. It felt like it was like 21-3. And then, same thing with the second quarter. And Carolina just kept pounding on top of them. And the game was actually a lot closer than what the game felt like. And then, second half comes around and, remember, Carolina scored on their first possession down, and they just scored the rest of that quarter. So once, Jacksonville started taking off that second half, they were gone. So I think about midway through that third quarter, it looked like I don't think Jacksonville had quite taken the lead yet, but you could tell they were probably going to.
Yeah, you could definitely. I mean, watching that game, you could tell. And we joked about it offline when we were all kind of watching the game together. Via the old interwebs there. But we had made a joke about whatever the coach said, it must have worked. And Brian made a joke about, hey, you guys are losing. Don't do that. Like, start winning now. And then that was the magic words. But really, whatever the coaching staff said, I mean, it sunk in because everything completely changed. Defense started firing on all cylinders. They started breaking up passes and started, just blanket covering people and, stuffing the line. Like, they were all over the place. If you look at that box score, Carolina scored 14 points the whole entire second half. That's almost less than what they scored in just the second quarter, right? Meanwhile, Jacksonville, man, they dumped it on. They scored 33 points in two quarters.
Yeah.
So yeah, something happened. Somebody got fired up in the locker room. Maybe they had the orange Gatorade that got them all excited. I don't know what it was, but something snapped and they came out and they absolutely put the beat down. And then once they got past that first score of Carolina in the third quarter, then it was all their show, man. And they took the lead. They commanded the game after that. And just what an impressive turnaround. And I will say that I was really surprised with the quality of play in this game.
Yeah. I think, we talked about it too, Jay and I, we've kind of talked about the way some of the broadcasts looked for the NAL, not as impressive, but this game was really, just quality of watching it, the broadcast perspective. And I think, now correct me if I'm wrong, but like the broadcast that they show, it's like the broadcast team of the home game is what they show on YouTube. So I think that was Jacksonville's home broadcast team and stuff like that. And so all the games I'd watch at Jacksonville, you can definitely tell they know what they're doing. Just real impressive to watch.
Yeah, and another thing I want to shine light to is we give Jacksonville a lot of credit, and I think that there is a lot of credit that needs to be given to them because there's an extremely talented team. You got Markel, you got Wade, you have Sam Castronova, and you have Uno. You have a ton of talent everywhere on that offense. One thing I feel bad, but you have to look at Carolina and say, you had this huge lead. You have to find a way to at least keep ahead of them. Find ways
Yeah.
to put the ball in the end zone. If you're not going to stop them, at least find ways to keep the ball in the end zone or keep it out of their hands. Because
Oh,
we lost Sammy.
we lost Sammy. Sammy, come back. Hopefully, Sammy will be back soon.
Hopefully. Like he was saying, I mean, yeah, the talking about. Oh, is he there?
Sammy, are you with us, Sammy? There you are.
There he is.
okay, I'm sorry, my phone died, but you could blame a lot of things on Jacksonville, and they deserve a lot of the credit. But as far as it goes with holding off, I feel like Carolina, they also need to be held accountable. There's no reason why that you blow a 17, 20-point lead, in my opinion, in a championship game. It's a big game. It's not like your regular season game. You need to find something to sustain that lead.
Oh yeah, and I mean, as much as we talked about what Jacksonville did in that second half, you can also say that it's as much as what Carolina didn't do. And as soon as Jacksonville started coming back, you could tell Carolina got rattled. That for whatever reason, they lost it.
Yep. So, going back to some stuff you were talking about with the the different players and everything. One thing I would mention is that Malik Henry, the kind of the star quarterback here, this was his first year, and for him to go as deep as he did in the playoffs, especially that surge, because they didn't start out very good in the NAL, but for them to have that second half surge and for them to run up, especially, and full disclosure, we're San Antonio guys, so we're kind of rooting for the gunslingers ourselves, but to see the way they handled the top team gunslingers that second half of the season, like they were all about business. So they definitely had something figured out in their game plan where they were capitalizing on all of Henry's abilities, his running ability, his accuracy on the throw, stuff like that. Going into this championship game, I don't know what happened. Again, they had the champ up against the ropes, right? They're the scrappy underdog that came from out of nowhere, and maybe they just punched themselves out in the first half and then just kind of ran out of gas in the second half, or maybe Jacksonville is just that good, right? I mean, Jacksonville has some just a roster full of incredible talent, and so maybe they just weren't expecting that that kind of explosive offense coming right out of the bat from Carolina. But whatever it was, Carolina threw everything they had at it and maybe just ran out of gas that second half, and then Jacksonville was like, I don't like this losing thing. We're going to turn this around, and we're going to actually win this game now.
Yeah, and I'm glad you gave a shout out to Malik Henry. He beat out last year's or the starting quarterback going into the year, Charles McCollum, throughout the early season. And Charles McCollum also had a pretty good, solid campaign last year with the Cobras. It was Bain, and then Bain got injured, and McCollum came in. But now you have McCollum to start off the year, and they had not as high as expectations as the championship game, because I believe it was Albany and San Antonio were the two favorites going into the year for the championship game. But for them to keep the success, go back-to-back championship games, and Malik Henry with the new quarterback, almost not entirely new team, but new enough to where it was more of a challenge rather than Albany going back-to-back. But it was a great season for Carolina. I don't want to take anything away from that season from them overall. Let's get on to the next topic here. Next is with back to the IFL, Sioux Falls. They're moving on from the legendary head coach Curtis Riggs and going on with Andre Fields. They announced, I believe, a week ago. What are your guys' reactions to Curtis Riggs stepping down from the arena game, and a more defensive-minded coach coming in?
Well, I wonder if it kind of goes back to what we were talking about before. Is that is that in relation to Bay Area winning? Them choosing a more defensive coach. Do we lose Sammy?
Yeah, he's probably switching out, doing some background stats stuff. I will say that kind of going into this, we didn't really know a whole lot about Curtis Riggs, as far as from his coaching standpoint or from his coaching career rather. We could tell from the season because again we discovered the IFL this season for the first time. We could tell. I mean, he knew what he was doing. He was a solid coach. But we didn't realize the depth of quality of coach that this person was. So doing some research here before the show and everything, we found out this guy went an incredible 217 career wins with only 53 career losses in a career that spans basically from 2003 to 2022, right? That's not even counting any of his numbers going into this year, okay? 11 championships. 35 championship game wins. This guy is a phenomenal coach. And so it sounds like he has stepped down from his coaching responsibilities in Sioux Falls to take a position with a college football staff somewhere. I'm not 100% sure on that, Sammy. You'll have to enlighten us on that. But if that's the case, whatever college is picking him up, they're picking up an incredible talent. And I don't expect him to be in a assistant position for long. I expect him to be a head coach fairly quickly within the next 2 to 3 years. That being the case, now that Sioux Falls has kicked over to a defensive-minded coaching, they promoted their defensive coach to be the head coach. This could be that change that we're talking about, right? The defenses are coming on a lot stronger. The arena football of old that I remember from like the AFL and AFL2 days and everything like that, it was always an air raid attack. You didn't spend a lot of effort concentrating on defense because you just couldn't, right? You had these incredibly insanely fast receivers. You had these quarterbacks that could snap a ball or you could take a snap and bomb it downfield in like a second, right? You just didn't have to worry about that. Well, defenses have finally caught up to that now, it seems like. And so promoting a defensive coach to be the head coach is probably going to be a good thing because now you've got a guy that knows how to stuff these offenses, and then he's going to develop an offense to try and counter what he knows as defense. So you're probably going to start seeing a lot more crazy stuff. Like, we were talking about in the NFL, the running back position is kind of going away. The game has modified itself. It's changed. Well, in the Arena League, maybe that same thing is happening, right? But just the opposite. And maybe now the ground and pound is becoming the new standard because your receivers can't break away. I will say one thing I do absolutely love about the IFL is that you do have the ability to have two receivers in motion. But apparently even then, that doesn't make that much of a difference because offenses are getting stuffed by these defenses, and you're going to have to start ground and pounding it. Those are my thoughts on it.
Yeah. He is joining one of his best friends at Washington University as one of the assistants there. Okay. Curtis says, and I agree. We're going to see more of a defensive-minded, similar team what we saw this year, but I feel like more focused on defense. My concern is, replacing a legend like Curtis Riggs. There's always your questions there.
It's never hard to follow the most popular, most winningest coach, whatever, in franchise history. So
yeah, I mean, let's go with an NFL reference here, right? Feel bad for the guy who had to replace Tom Landry, or my guy in Green Bay, Mike Holmgren, right? Mm-hmm. Incredible legend, right? Even before that, Vince Lombardi. We've been very fortunate in Green Bay to have these legendary coaches. But at some point in time, you're going to run out of people. And then so the next guy up is going to get absolutely crucified. If he doesn't produce, 2-3 championships on his own within the first 3 years, he's going to get crucified as the worst coach because he's got to follow in these amazingly big shoes that there's no way he's going to be able to fill,
And ownership has to help him out too. They have to continue to support team, give him a good team that is going to help him succeed, instead of giving him what Curtis would have and maybe have him develop it. Like, you have to give him a good team to start off with at least.
You got to give him the team he wants.
Yes.
Let it give him a chance to succeed. I mean, Fields is following 11 IFL championships. That's
that's
insane. It's insane.
That's insane to think like that. Again, that is not. I would not want to be the cleanup batter after that. You know.
Yeah.
So,
let's talk about the third the league here, CIF, from last year. They had a little bit of a fallout. Their top two teams left, Omaha and Sioux City, and two expansion teams pulled out. One in Texas, one in Colorado, and Topeka pulled out. They lost 5 teams in a matter of a day, and it's looking like they're all going to the NAL from what it's shown. What are your guys' reaction? Let's do first. What are you guys' reaction on them joining the NAL, and then what about the CIF? We'll go to the CIF next.
So if they're joining the NAL, I'd actually be kind of excited about that. Let's be honest. I think, the NAL was a decent league. I think they had some teams that had some really good talent, but I think unfortunately, the anti-Midas touch of Antonio Brown and the poor performance of the Fayetteville Mustangs really, was a devastating 1-2 punch for this league. We all know about the nonsense with Antonio Brown. In fact, there's arrest warrants out for him right now. I don't know if they've actually caught him or not, but I hope they do. And I hope, they just are not very nice to him and tell him his feet smell and just, tell him he's not a very good person, because he really railroaded that whole Albany team, and I get it. That whole Albany team, that's a legendary team. That's an old AFL legend. And, it was run very well. Now, granted, it's bounced around, since the AFL folded, many, many years ago and probably been brought back a couple of times and everything, but there's history there. And for Antonio Brown to get involved and disrespect the team and the history and, just the sport in general, that really was bad. So yeah, Antonio's not my favorite person right now.
Albany was like the 2-time champion of the NAL, and then they folded, not even halfway into the season. And not even before they folded, it was all the, Antonio Brown's going to play. He fired everybody, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. So, and then you find out, he forgot to pay the bill, so he got the team suspended. Yeah. And then he didn't pay a bunch of players, and now he's got an arrest warrant, and because he's a jerk and did some criminal stuff. So yeah, again, I think he really did a lot of damage, not just to Albany, but to the NAL as an organization.
Yeah.
Now, I will say, you probably know a little bit more about this than I do, but there is talk that the original owner of the Albany Empire, who sold the team to Antonio Brown, is going to be bringing a team back to Albany. I hope that actually does happen, just for the fans of Albany, because they got such a rough deal out of that.
Yeah, I heard Corda is planning on bringing a team back. They're hoping for 2024, a team in 2024. But that workers' compensation, that's going to make a huge hurdle for the team. And that was one reason why AB was brought on in the first place, is to cover for that. Workers' comp is like $1.5 million that they have to pay just on workers' compensation to the state. Yeah. But on positive news, I think Omaha and Sioux City, those are the two best ownerships in the whole sport. Omaha has been around for, I think this year was their 20th season. And Sioux City's right there with 20 consecutive seasons. Those are both consecutive ran franchises. Those are both, I think, can be staying power and can really help this league have a backbone of solid franchises with, as of right now, San Antonio and Carolina.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But probably not San Antonio for long, as what we've heard.
Well, and maybe not. Again, nothing is set in stone. That announcement was supposed to come out, and we're not big on spreading rumors. Everybody that's watching the show has probably heard the same rumors that we have. There's talk that San Antonio might be moving to a different league, but nothing official has come out yet. No. So we just don't know. We could speculate all day long, but None of us here are in the owners' meetings. None of us here have inside connections, with the NAL and upper management and things like that. So all we can do is speculate. So for right now, San Antonio and Carolina are the only teams in the NAL. And we know the NAL is a decent product. I mean, they need to improve their broadcast quality. But that's, again, we're talking about San Antonio, who plays in the Freeman Coliseum, which is like, a 60-something-year-old facility. They're lucky they even have, electricity in there. But
I don't think they do. They have a generator and an extension cord coming from the back.
And they may. But
I think that's why the music skips when they're playing it in between the snaps.
Power spike.
Yeah.
Yeah. But to see the teams of the CIL, the CIF rather, go into that could be an incredible thing. Now, I will say I'm a little concerned about Carolina, because you're talking about a lot of teams that are kind of centrally located in the United States, right? Carolina is going to have to be traveling all the way from the East Coast to the center of the country. Yeah. Texas, San Antonio is going to have a little bit of a drive themselves. However, there's going to be some really good quality teams that are going to be plugging into that organization, which could breathe new life into it and could actually mean, some serious sustainability for the NAL.
Yeah, I hope so. NAL is a really fun league. Two teams that are rumored to go, but right now have an announcement on the 29th. One team has the announcement and same ownership with Gillette as Billings. They put their futures on the cusp right now. They're making an announcement. I believe the 29th is what they said. What do you guys think is going to happen? What do you think that with Gillette? Is Gillette going to follow them to whatever league?
I would say so, because there's, again, there's connection there. There's history. Most of these teams that are in, the CIF are all kind of banking on each other for their success. And so if two of your key, teams pull out of a league and go over to another league, chances are the rest are going to pull out also, because who are you going to replace them with? It would be like if the Dallas Cowboys and the New England Patriots were to pull out of the NFL and start their own, let's say there's another option. Who do you replace them with? There's nobody that's going to have that kind of legendary franchise history. So teams are going to bail out and go with them just, because of that, kind of symbiotic relationship, right? They both feed off of each other. They both need each other. So they're going to go where the other, the powerhouse is going to keep their brand alive.
And this would be the four teams. If Gillette and Billings leave, Omaha, Sioux City, they've already left. Those are the top two brands of that league. So the next two leaving, that'd be crazy. It didn't even be Salina and an island by themselves with a whole bunch of expansion teams.
Yeah. So I would say if that does happen, we'll know in the next couple of days or not. But if, Billings and Gillette do pull out, then you're pretty much going to see the end of the CIF. The ones that are left are either going to migrate over to the NAL or find some other organization. And I would think that, smart money would say that they're going over to the NAL, which again would be great for the NAL, because that's going to breathe new life back into the organization, which is what they need at this point.
Oh yeah.
Now
I know we've talked a lot about, just those basically NAL and the CIF just merging, both of them are kind of struggling on their own. So, they kind of need each other to either, one absorb or, do some kind of merger or something, just so both of them have a chance to survive, all the teams there.
Oh, 100%. Now, I will say though, that a lot of these moves are dependent on, some of these old school teams. Let's look at NAL, for example. We know West Texas has changed its name and they're going over into the IFL. Right.
The AFL.
I'm sorry, the AFL. Orlando, Jacksonville, some of these organizations are going to the AFL. There really isn't enough substantial evidence for my pessimistic mind to believe that we're at that point yet that we can depend on the AFL being an actual viable thing next season. We've announced that there's going to be an AFL. We've announced the cities that they're going to be in, but nobody's talked about the names of the teams, the facilities that they're going to be playing at, any of the coaching staff or anything like that. Now, I get it that right now we're entering into the NFL. Brian and I have talked about this before on our show. The XFL being, spring league football and being partnered with the NFL, you don't want to go head to head with them. And so you want to advertise very strategically and very carefully. Is the AFL taking the same approach, or do they just not have their stuff figured out? And that's the thing that has me concerned, is that even if you do have your plan and you don't want to go head to head, you should be dropping teasers or doing something to give people the confidence, maybe even releasing, a team name or a facility or something, some kind of breadcrumbs, little
just something
strategic
to remind everybody that they're there. You know?
That way people have confidence and belief that this product is actually going to be viable and it is going to come out next year. So far right now, again, all we have is speculation. I mean, we have Reddit leaks and what's that other one that I don't like so much? I can't even remember the name of the software. It shows you how old school I am. I don't even remember software names. But there's rumor mills galore, but nothing substantial, nothing solid, nothing factual. It's just guys like us that talk about football all the time that are like, well, man, I wonder if what about this and what about that, and but there's nothing solid there.
And you have two websites up that you own, and they have conflicting timelines of when the league's gonna start. That's a really bad look on the league.
Yep. So that being the case, a lot of these moves again are based on these teams migrating over to the AFL. What if the AFL doesn't actually happen? Then what happens to those teams? Do they run back to the NAL? And then do the teams that have moved from the NAL move to the NAL rather, jump back over to the CIF that's now fallen apart? Or are you going to have a mega organization, right? Does the NAL wind up with 16 teams, kind of like the IFL does? And if that's the case,
what Texas goes back and says, our bad guys.
If that happens, I'm kind of hopeful that you do have something like, a CIF NAL merger where you do have 16 teams, kind of like the IFL. I think it provides better quality of play. I think it provides, better rivalries and just better overall value for the customers, right? We've watched some of these IFL games and they've been absolutely insane. We've watched some of the NAL games and some of the San Antonio games, we watched in person and they were pretty good. But when you play the same team, like when Albany fell out and then we had to play a team that we had just played the week before, it was like, that's not so much fun. And then when Fayetteville dropped out, and then we had to play Carolina 3 times in a row, it was like, and we didn't do so good those 3 times. It would be a lot better if there was a lot more competition. And let's be honest with, there's 4 or 5 major arena leagues in existence right now. That's a lot of competition. That's a lot of market saturation. If they could condense and make more streamlined products, I think it would be better overall for the sustainability of all the different organizations, right? IFL would do better, NAL would do better, CAF would the teams anyways would be fine because they would be part of the NAL. And then some of these other ones that are coming along, the American Indoor Football Association, you wouldn't have this complete market saturation where everybody's like, I don't even know where the heck these teams are coming from, or some kind of clear delineation that, hey, this is like, this is tier 1 ball, this is tier 2 ball, this is tier 3 ball, something to have them kind of stand apart so you could know. Like for us, for example, we have, San Antonio Missions baseball. We know they are kind of bottom of the rung, right? And then we have Corpus Christi has a team and they're ranked higher, but that they're AA, we're single A, they're AA. And then there's some other teams around that are AAA. Like, that delineation is there.
Yeah.
If we could do something like that with indoor football, that would be extremely helpful. You know,
Yeah, there's a lot of gray area. It's like the old AFL, NFL days. And that's one thing I think that makes the sport great is that you have competitive leagues. They make other leagues perform better. Like, you know how you have gaming industry where you have a competitive game that makes the one company want to strive better, continue to grow, and continue to push. I think that's one thing that's healthy about the NAL and IFL is they're pushing each other to be better in these leagues.
It works when both the teams are competitive. It works when they put a good product on the field. It works when you don't have an idiot owner that just sandbags the entire team. So I definitely think like we've been talking about the NAL. They need to get the smart teams in, the established teams. Get that good solid foundation. And yeah, they can build on that, whether it's with a merger with the CIF or the teams run or the leagues run, separate of each other or whatever it is. They both need to be successful, competitive, and a good product to watch if they're going to build each other up. Because, if you got one league that's good and one league that sucks, well, obviously, everyone's going to follow the leagues that are good. So it's they need to be competitive. They need to have that like I said, competitive nature just to help each other out and stand out with each other.
Agreed. And I think we're on to our last topic here, the AIF, almost the newest member. I think they are another returning league like the AFL, but they have some interesting franchises. You got the Harrisburg Stampede, Columbus Lions that I think are right now the favorites of the league based off what they did last year, tearing everybody up in their league respectively. And then you have teams like the Wheeling Miners, the Cedar Rapids, River Kings, River City Rage, and you have the two Texas rivals now. I think the only league there right now that has the Texas rivals, I could be wrong, I'm going off memory, but with Corpus Christi and Amarillo. I think it's going to be exciting next year, a very exciting year. And it sounds like they're wanting to add on more teams. So I'm excited for that. What are you guys' thoughts on the league so far?
So, as newcomers to a lot of this arena stuff, we're just getting our feet wet on stuff. I will say, looking at the presentation of the AIF so far, I am very impressed. Not only are these, the website is a quality website, it's laid out very, very well. Not to take a shot against the NAL, but I think the NAL has a little bit jankier of a website in comparison. The logos are sharp, the logos are nice. They're very much a professional quality presentation. Now NAL has some great logos, not taking a shot at that or anything like that. The team colors are great, like that part of the presentation, but I'm a big kind of techie guy. So I'm kind of drawn to, the bright, flashy stuff. You know what I mean? And the AIF is pretty bright and pretty flashy. Let's be honest. I'm very excited, obviously, for Texas to be dominating, to have two teams and potentially could be taking over an entire league like that. We know XFL has 3 Texas teams, and, it almost wound up being a Texas playoff. So we're, again, biased because, Texas, we love Texas, but this is a pretty good looking organization so far. Now, I would love to see, like, I'm excited for the season to start, to actually see the production value, the quality of play, the players, the coaches, the fan bases, even, right? Because that all plays into the experience here. If you've got great gameplay on the field, but you've got a fan base that kind of just sits there and doesn't really even engage, or you only have 1,000, 2,000 people in the stands, it detracts from the quality of product that you have on the field.
It looks bad. I mean, really, and we talked about that for the Gunslingers games. First half of the season they played great, but you pan around the stadium and there's nobody there.
Yeah.
And it's not an inviting look. So, like Jay said, the website looks really cool. The logos are cool. Let's see what the gameplay is. Let's see what the actual production value, what it actually does. So I'm looking forward to it.
Right. Now, Sammy, let me ask you this. You said this is going to be their first official season this next season, or this will be their second season this next season?
This will be their first season returning. They were back in 2015. I forget the last year of the previous iteration, but that was they were a returning league to this next year and this upcoming year.
Okay, so it's basically kind of like an AFL kind of thing where they existed. How was the quality? Okay, how was the quality back then in like 2015?
It was. I think it was good enough to. It's good enough to spark two leagues. The AIFA was sparked from it, and the NAL that we know today was birthed from the AIF. We had Columbus. You had some other good teams in there that ended up being in the NAL. For a short stint, it's pretty equivalent to what we saw the other leagues before the AFL came around. While the AFL was still around, like the IFL, pretty equivalent to that. I don't think it'll be equivalent to the IFL anymore. I think though what we could see, and it's based off the ownership and what we'll see on the field. So we don't know 100%, but from what I'm hearing from people in Columbus and in league offices is that it's going to be competitive to the NAL. And what was the CIF was supposed to take over for the CIF spot. So I'm excited for the league. If it is what they're saying it is, I'm very excited for the league. I'll be able to go to some games now as Team Down Wheeling. That's right back in my backyard. So
nice.
I don't like. We're looking at their website. They show 7 teams, and I don't think that's enough to be a competitive league. I think 8's the bare minimum, but you really need 10.
Right.
But
again, news is still out there. Like there's still breaking stories, and so we're banking on the speculation that these CIF teams are going to be going to the NAL.
Maybe they go over here.
Maybe they go to the AIF. Right.
Exactly.
And strategically speaking, I mean, a lot of these teams are East Coast teams ish, but it wouldn't be that hard for them to travel. It's, the USA is a humongous country, but it's not like we're separated by 18 million miles or anything like that. I mean, you can find a way to get over there and it be cost effective for a team. So we just don't know. And I think that's the part that has me the most intrigued and has me the most engaged in this is what is the story going to develop into? Who is going where and what does that mean for each organization, right? Do we see the NAL become a powerhouse again and get a minimum 8 teams and be able to start doing stuff? Are they going to pick up more? Or is the NAL going to completely collapse? Is the CIF going to exist after, this next week? What's going to happen? So that's the part that I'm excited about. It's almost like watching, soap operas from back in the 80s and 90s.
Yeah. One thing I'm excited about, and then I think what will offset a lot of the travel is from what I'm hearing and what I've seen off the ticket sales is that they're having 5 home games. So I'm assuming there's going to be a 10-game regular season. A shorter regular season with as much distance, you could do something like divisions, conferences, dissolve the travel. So that's one thing that the NAL I think should do, and hopefully they do that in the future. They get enough teams on the East Coast and on the West and the Midwest to do divisions and be able to break up the schedule, make it easier for their owners. So we'll see what happens in the coming weeks. And I know they're having their league owners meeting, so. We'll see what happens. Like I said, we'll see what happens in the coming weeks, man.
Well, I know the NAL kind of had a weird schedule, especially with Fayetteville and Albany. They had, some teams finished with 11, 12 games and then some with 13, 14. And then you had the IFL, which I think they had like a 43-week season or something like that. But, just kind of a good steady number of games just to kind of, set your divisions, play in between there, and then cross over a little bit, but just a good solid season for everybody.
To go along with what Brian was saying, I'm looking back at the NAL 2023 stats. Carolina and West Texas both played 14 games. Jacksonville played 13. San Antonio only played 12, right? And so how can you say that your, Jacksonville Sharks are the best team? They played 13 games. Carolina played 14. San Antonio only played 12. Like, maybe that next game would have been a deciding factor for San Antonio. So it creates too much speculation. I don't like messy things like that.
Yeah.
I
Which
like
goes back to
standardized.
the 17 league. Hopefully through all this that's happening with the CIF and everything, they're adding some more. Plus, odd number leagues just seem weird. I'm not about that.
Yeah, it creates weird mismatches, and we like resolved issues. Brian and I are both kind of musicians. And so we don't like unresolved music. We don't like unresolved issues. We like everything neat and packaged and done and put away.
All right. I think this wraps up our show. What are you guys' final thoughts, man? Brian, do you have any final thoughts?
I'm looking forward to all the news that's coming out. There's a lot coming out. I know kind of in our group chats and stuff, we've got dates for the next couple of weeks of when teams are going to make announcements, when leagues are going to make announcements. So I'm just kind of going to sit back and enjoy it all and just kind of see where everything lands.
So I am definitely, as I've said, I'm excited because of all the different news and everything. I'm cautiously optimistic for the moves that the IFL is going to be making, right? They're going to be bringing in some teams and they're losing some teams to the AFL. I'm really, really curious about this AFL thing. I'm going to be honest. I really want to know if this is actually going to happen, right? Because again, I'm an old school cat, right? I remember when AFL was a big thing when it came out, right? I remember how big of an impact the whole Kurt Warner story had on everything. And I remember having the PlayStation AFL video game. Like, this was a big deal for me. It was a big deal for all my friends because this was like, hey, NFL is over with, but we still have something to do. Like, we can watch, indoor football. And it's a different game, but it's cool. Sorry, I'm getting a call. Had to ignore that. But I remember how cool the AFL was and how important it was that we had something to do in the summertime, and it was football, and it was good, and everything was great, and it was beautiful. I remember when San Antonio had, the San Antonio Force. I remember, and that was years and years and years ago. I remember when we had the Talons come into town and having season tickets for that. And I remember going over to New Orleans and watching the last game that the San Antonio Talons would ever play against the New Orleans Voodoo and bringing friends into the game. And I remember wearing my Robert Quiroga jersey and seeing Robert's parents there and actually talking to him. And they're like, "You drove all the way from San Antonio?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And then driving all the way back from New Orleans to go to the season party at Lion and Rose, and seeing all the players and just that look of impending doom on their face because they didn't know, but they knew it was coming to an end, and just that whole heartbreak, man. Like, so I've got a lot of emotion invested in what was the AFL, and so for them to tease and not give anything else, like, that just has me on edge, and it has me kind of back in those feels and back in that heartbreak. and so I'm hopeful that it's not going to turn out that way, but I'm pretty much convinced that that's what it's going to end, is that it's just going to wind up being a rumor, and there it goes again.
Yeah, and I started watching arena football. I remember watching it, and I think it was Columbus. It wasn't Columbus. It was a Cleveland Gladiators game, and they were a really fun team to watch. And then I found out Columbus had a team. I was all about Columbus teams when I was really young. So watching Columbus and Cleveland go at it the few times they could, and then Cleveland, after Columbus folded, Cleveland dominated the league for a little bit. You had Pittsburgh Power in there. That made some good rivalries up in the Northeast. So seeing a revitalization in the East Coast of the league, it really was fun. But that's all I have for today. I'm excited about this podcast, man, and the future of it. And what this could lead to.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
I'm definitely excited, right? This gives us, hardcore football fanatics something to talk about, something to look
Yeah.
forward to. And, let's be honest, I've said it, you can see my Packers stuff behind me. I'm a diehard Green Bay Packers fan. Brian is a diehard Dallas fan. Our seasons probably aren't going to go the way we want them to.
I don't know what you're talking about, Jason. It's our year. All right,
Yeah.
it's our year. All right.
Brian probably has a better chance than I do. So I don't have much to look forward to. I have very high hopes, but I probably don't have much to look forward to. So this gives me something to fill that void until we wait until our next super quarterback emerges, if he ever does, probably 20 years from now. But in the meantime, we've got more football to talk about, and we've got more things to look forward to, and we've got more things to celebrate, because every one of us is going to have a team in our home city in some kind of league that we're going to be able to talk about for quite a while.
Yep.
All right. It was nice chatting with you guys. The rest of you, everybody, have a nice night.
Take care,
All right,
everybody.
thank you, Sammy.
Yep.
Y'all have a good one.